All right, so your community water project, right, has 4 parts. So the first part is your claim evidence reasoning. So I have an example of this as a PDF. You can always watch the recording if you would like to see what's there, but I think showing you the PDF gives you a sense. Um, so let me make this just a little bit bigger. All right, so what needs to be present? It's always helpful for there to be a brief overview. I gave an introduction to what the water site is or what the watershed is. I also talked about its origins. Where does the water start? Where does it flow to? And then I gave a little bit of the current context. So, what's in the water is a good way of thinking about that. And then the claim, right? Is the water quality good, poor, medium? What can you say about what's in your water? And then I provided some evidence. So I gave examples of impaired water. That's a common language where it looks at the total maximum daily load. That's a great example of data you could incorporate. Uh, the other example is a concentration of dissolved solids. So that's very common to be used at water that's sampled from agricultural sites. That's another piece of data that you can use. So nitrates, for example, are very low in the Sacramento River Basin, which improves their water quality. And then, right, I was thinking about water temperatures. We've just talked about that. Oh, sorry, I went too fast. So you can think about mean water temperatures. And then the last piece is your reasoning. So I'm worried about algal blooms in freshwater bodies as a result of, right, nutrients or total dissolved solids that shouldn't be there. So that's a great example of, right, your reasoning, why you care about this evidence that's connected to your claim. Okay, I want to pause and see if there are any questions about the claim evidence reasoning part of your community water project.
Is this oral presentation?
Can you say that one more time?
Is this like the oral
Yep, this
presentation,
is the
like
oral
slides I go?
presentation. So I have a recording of it as an MP4 file. So your slides, and then you can present them on Zoom, similar to what we're doing right now. Record that, and I will say that each of you has a folder by name for you to upload all of your materials for your community water project. So great clarifying question. This is your oral presentation. You can use slides. You don't have to have your camera on when you're presenting your slides. That's entirely up to you. Okay,
The
next. Yeah, go for it, Jackie.
is that like also due Thursday?
So you've got some flexibility, right? Technically, your grades are due the 27th. So I'm flexible. You have up until the 27th to get those materials to me. So,
Okay, thank you.
like feedback, sooner is better by far. But 27th is the hard and fast last day that I can accept it. Okay, so the next piece is the state of water. So this is an assignment that asks you to kind of take knowledge from reliable or valid sources and integrate that to kind of talk about the current state of water. So I was looking at the Sacramento River. There are a couple of pieces that I did here in terms of um, my state of water. So I talk about the actual volume. So what's its discharge? Um, I also think about like what feeds into it or what does it feed. I talk about what the water is used for and who uses that water, and maybe some of the uses. I talk about things like dams or levees or any man-made or engineering components that help to monitor and control that water. And then the other piece that I'm also thinking about is what is that watershed home to? So in this case, I was thinking about different kinds of fish. Um, this particular water site is vulnerable to agricultural use and the potential runoff that comes from that. But it's also been polluted by mining activities, particularly mercury is really bad in that space. And then there's actually some weathering that occurs that also contributes to other levels such as phosphorus. So I talk a little bit about how that water quality is measured and or controlled. And then in the case of the Sacramento River, there's an impact of climate change. So extreme weather events like flooding, right, or the droughts are something that have an influence in that space too. and then I just have a quick summary, and of course, my references. Okay, so the state of water goal is somewhere between 2 to 3 pages. Again, you're trying to organize the information. Think of it in terms of your audience as someone who maybe is not an expert in this body of water, but who's interested in learning more. Any questions about the state of water written assignment? Okay, and next up is our data wrangling. So this is where you are either using figures that have already been created or you're creating your own figure. I tried to give examples here. So you could use maps. Maps are a great option in terms of showing your watershed and or um, water site. You could use a timeline. Maybe there are, say, for example, significant points at which there was an intervention or a diversion of water, and that influenced your site. You could use a figure like a bar graph. So in this case, I'm showing the type of crops that are grown using the Sacramento River. Water temperature. So this is an example of a figure that was created based on average daily maximum, and then calculations that were made by um, folks who are monitoring the Sacramento River water temperature, and that shows you some of the variation. Maybe you're really interested in flooding. So this is an example of the profiles of different sampling points and right their elevation, where their position is. So uh, that's another example of a figure that you could use. And then maybe you're interested in river levels, like how much variation really is there in, say, for example, your body of water. So these are just a few examples. You don't have to do these, but you do have to choose different types of visualizations. And that's going to be really helpful to you as you kind of think about both writing about the state of water and kind of making sense of your figures. Okay, and then, oh, that's why. So the last one is the solutions document. Um, and so I gave examples of what the issue is and proposed solutions. You can have more than one solution. That's totally fine. If you feel like you're in a place where um, there's more than one way to be responsive to that dilemma, you are totally welcome to talk about one in greater detail or multiple, maybe in a medium level of detail. So the solutions are the last part. If you're thinking to yourself, now wait a minute, what are all the pieces that I have to do in your community water project, which is the file that's linked in Canvas for you? Um, there is a PDF of what I've asked you to do. So um, you can see that here. So, ooh, sorry, I navigated away. Let me try that again. All right. Okay, maybe I'll just do it this way. I think it's when I click out that it's an issue. Okay, so these are the pieces. Your references can just be on your state of water. You don't have to have them as a separate document. You can just bundle all of them into your state of water assignment. And then if you're thinking about, right, so for your case study, I think that part's pretty straightforward. There's a claim piece, an evidence piece, and a reasoning. It helps to give a little bit of context. And this is the one that's somewhere between 2 at most 5. It shouldn't be a really long presentation. The state of water, here are some water profile questions. You could expand in other areas if you think that that's more appropriate. Um, for your data wrangling, it's at least 3 concepts, right? So concentration or solubility, right? Or something associated with the meteorological, so the flooding, right? Or the volume levels. And then you can either create or, if you appropriately source, your 3 figures, right? That are going to tell the story of the water at your site. So you want to include your descriptive figure captions, your title, your axes, the labels. Um, and this is where your written summary of your analysis, like 1 to 2 sentences of key takeaways for each figure. So, what's your conclusion kind of as you look at and think about that data? And then last but not least, your proposed solution. So remember, um, your 3 solutions, one of them has to be chemical, one of them can be social, and then one of them has to integrate another discipline or field. Um, if you want to call those out explicitly, that's totally fine by me. So water purification is a great example of chemical treatment. A social could be one of the examples I thought about was taxing corporations and using part of the tax to remediate water that gets polluted. And then an integration could be something like engineering, right? So maybe it's adding in additional levees to prevent runoff or something like that. All right. So don't forget, from a reference standpoint, you're using APA. If you're not sure how to do that, I'm happy to help. I actually have a bunch of tools that I reference from the library that could be useful for you, but I'm also happy to walk through what citations can look like if that would be useful to you. And I did give some examples of how to cite or use ChatGPT or another AI if that's something that you're using. So, um, each of you has a folder. What I would like for you to do is upload all of your materials for the community water project. Um, it would be super helpful if you label them. So I tried in my exemplar, um, right? So claim evidence, reasoning, CER, um, the state of water, right? And usually your site. The data wrangling would be great. Your solutions, so it would be great if um, you could provide that. If for some reason you're like, ooh, wait, um, I'm not sure what I need to do, you can always check in with me and I'm happy to help navigate any one of these pieces for you. So if there's something where you're like, wait, I'm not sure which part I need to do, you should have the freedom to upload and move materials into your folder. Again, we've got some flexibility here. So um, we've got a soft deadline of this Thursday. You want feedback on that before you get your final grade. Thursday is when I'm asking for you to turn that in. We've got a hard deadline of next week, um, after which point I can't accept work because I have to submit your grades. But please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know if you have any questions. So I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording.